up, everybody? Eric here, Driveline, world's okayest steering wheel holder, and shooting straight into this one. Not doing any sort of a pre-cut or anything like that. I'm going to try to remember each of my points that I want to make here. Do my best. It's a lot to talk through. I just realized you can see my whole, in my shades, you see the camera right there and the whole dash. That's funny. So, I get a lot of comments about miles. Anytime I talk about miles, there will be the comments that say, but Eric, you're not paid by the mile. Why do you care about miles? And then, you know, a lot of comments of, shouldn't you be less concerned about pay per mile and all that stuff, you know? Oh, you guys, you've probably seen it all if you've been out there on the internet researching, watching various videos. So I wanted to, I did a video about this a long time ago, but I wanted to come back at it with a little bit different of an angle. The first thing that I want to address is the technicality. That's really what my previous video a couple years ago was about. And I remember very distinctly. I remember being in training class, this is almost 5 years ago, where George said, show of hands in the room, does Prime pay empty miles or deadhead miles? Does Prime pay deadhead miles? And most people in the room raised their hand when the option was no. There's like one or two that raised their hand for yes, and then he's like, yes, you know, we definitely pay for deadhead miles. Now, in that previous video, I said they're able to say that on a technicality. Actually, there's a technicality in both directions. Technically, yes, Prime is able to say you get paid deadhead miles. But technically, you could also argue, no, you do not. I come down on the side that no, you do not get paid for deadhead miles. Like that's just a fact. And the reason I know this, and now I have a lot more data to back it up than I did back then. Back then, I had just completed a trip, I think, where I was able to do a comparison of the customer. Now, I just picked up at a customer that I've picked up at probably 10 times, maybe more, many times. It's a great customer. My only complaint is they just load they're just fat loads, like 44,450 pounds, I think. But what I will say at least is that they load them evenly. I'm at 33.3 on both, you know, so at least they know how to load heavy trailers. But anyway, so I've seen enough loads of this customer. There's one in Ohio that I'm going to try to score a load out of that I really love, that customer, which is right next to where I'm delivering this one. And I've picked up there quite a few times. So I've got a good grasp on the rates. And of course they fluctuate and they change, but sometimes I'm picking up at these customers like within the same week or two, right? And because of load choice, I can see a lot of variables. But basically what it boils down to is, if a load that I pick up, let's say I'm 1 mile from where I'm picking up a load. 1 mile, like I'm parked at a truck stop and I'm 1 mile from that load or that shipper. And that load pays, I don't know, $2,000 for 1,000 miles. Let's just say 1,000 miles for $2,000, okay? And I'm 1 mile away. So it's 1,001 mile for $2,000. That same load, if I was 300 miles away, would still pay $2,000. So now it's 1,300 miles for $2,000. So the way Prime's able to say that they pay for deadhead miles is they're going to break all that up and include those 300 deadhead miles for total trip miles of 1,300 miles for $2,000. But if you were 1 mile away, you would still get $2,000. So the deal's a lot better if you're 1 mile away. The load doesn't change. The customer is not paying an extra at $2 a mile. They're not paying an extra $600 because you're 300 miles away. They're still paying whatever they're paying for the load. It doesn't change whether you're 1 mile away or 300 miles away. So technically, the carrier could say, well, you're paid those 300 deadhead miles. But you'd be paid that $2,000 even if you were 1 mile away. So in my mind, you don't get paid deadhead miles. I lean on that side. We don't get paid deadhead miles. They're included on your dispatch. They're included on your paperwork. You don't pay excess miles for those 300 miles. So it's all part of the package, but you would be paid to $2,000 even if you were already at the shipper. The rate doesn't change just because you're 300 miles away. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's kind of just utilizing a technicality to say that you're paid for the deadhead miles. You're not paid for the deadhead miles. Now, moving on to the why do you always talk about miles? You're not paid by miles. Well, so that is true. If you're a company driver, you're definitely paid by the mile. If you're a lease or if you've paid your truck off and you're just leased on to carry freight for Prime or any other carrier, then at least with Prime, we're paid by the load. That is true. And so you just look at all the variables. You see the total amount that's proposed to you, that's offered to you. You see the fuel surcharge, if there's any tolls, any stop pay, anything like that, and you make a determination. You're going to make the variables include are there mountains? Where are you going to end up at? How heavy do you think the load is going to be? What do you think about that shipper or receiver, that customer? Is there too much time on it? And how many miles is it? Does it work with your hours? You're going to take all those variables into account. But at the end of the day, you're paid by the load. That is true. I see that comment all the time. Why are you always talking about miles? You're not paid by the mile. You're right. We're paid by the load. And in all honesty, a really good way that I use is what is the total the gross dollar amount to the truck per day. Like that's a big one for me. I'm looking at per day and making sure I'm not just beating the shit out of my truck. That's really kind of to simplify it, that's what I want to look at is my minimum of what I want to see per day. And then I want to keep the miles as low as possible for what that minimum is. So, we really get caught up in the pay per mile thing, the $2.50 per mile. But at the same time, it does matter. It definitely matters. And that's really the context that I see a lot of these comments on is, you talk about miles, they don't really matter. Yes, they do. They definitely matter. And that's really ultimately why we break it down by the mile. Even though we're not paid by the mile, we're paid by the load. It definitely matters. And if you're a company driver, it matters for you too. And I'll get to that in a minute. But the reason it matters is, at least with Prime, we're paying excess miles. And excess miles means any non-dispatch miles. There's an excess mile fee for those miles. Now, every time I say this, someone says, oh, that's just part of the scam. Whatever, man. It's not it's their equipment. So it's like, I'm not mad about paying excess miles. It's their equipment. Until it's your equipment, it's their equipment. And they only want the equipment driven for dispatch miles. If you drive it beyond those dispatch miles, you pay an excess mileage fee. It is what it is. I have no problem with that. The problem that I have on that front is that the vast majority of dispatches are undercutting us drivers because they use this zip to zip or whatever the hell it is instead of address to address, and it screws the driver 9 out of 10 times. I think I talked about it in January that it was 600. Was it six? What was my? It was either 600 or 800 miles I drove in January that were not dispatch miles. Not because I was just out running around, just, you know, going to Six Flags and stuff. It was because every damn dispatch had like an extra 20, 30, 40, 50 miles. Or if I had to go to a washout that was 30 or 40 miles out of the way, that's 60 to 80 miles round trip that are not dispatch miles. Those miles I have to pay for. So it definitely matters. Not only do I have to pay for them in excess miles, I have to pay for the fuel for those miles. And not only do I have to pay for the fuel for those miles, they're miles on my truck. This is a truck that's almost paid off. It's a lot of extra miles on my truck that I'm not being compensated for, but I'm actually having to pay for. I'm having to pay for them in excess miles. I'm having to pay for the fuel for those miles. I'm having to pay for just the wear and tear on my truck for those miles. And I'm having to give up time on my clock for those miles. So it definitely matters. Like the comments of, don't worry about that stuff. Just run your loads and get your bottom line, what you want to see in a day rate, and don't get all stressed out about those miles. It's not that I get all stressed out about it. It's that it matters. It matters a lot, and I'm doing a lot of extra miles in this truck that cost me money. That cost me money, cost me hours, and beat up on my truck. And, you know, it just is what it is. So we have to take that into account. Like, I feel like you'd be foolish to not take that into account. I mean, even today, like there was a Love's 5 miles backwards, the opposite direction of my 90 from the shipper, that I could have gone to and fueled the reefer. But there was also a Love's 30 miles ahead of me. Well, I'm not going to go backwards because that's 10 miles round trip going the opposite direction. So I'm just constantly making decisions on that. Like, could I've gone and filled the reefer shorter? Yeah. I would assume that it's still going to be paid for, the reefer fuel, seeing that I stopped 30 miles down the road and I'm parked here. And it's where I wanted to stop. But it's just, my point is, I'm just always trying to cut the miles as much as possible. Low miles, high revenue. That's what I just want to keep. Like, this truck is almost 3 years old since I got it, and it's at 275,000 miles. I'm proud of that. I feel like, and this truck has been a team truck now and then. So considering that it's been a team truck on occasion, I feel like I've kept it pretty low mileage, under 100,000 miles a year. So if that tells you anything, you know, I get into arguments with people all the time about running West Coast, and they try, oh, you know, but I do a load that I can get a load out of Washington that pays $5,000. Okay, well, how much of your week does it use? Well, it takes me the whole week. Well, I do $5,000 in revenue, gross revenue to the truck, just hopping around the Midwest on probably 30 to 40% less miles without going over all the mountains and without spending a lot more in fuel. But, you know, I get that some people just like dealing with less customers. When you run the Midwest and the low mileage, you got to deal with a lot more customers, a lot more. You're at a lot more shippers and receivers. It's not going to be that coast to coast, get loaded and spend the week just driving. That is not running Midwest like I do. You're gonna be a lot more customers. But, you know, I'm just all about the low miles, and, you know, so miles matter. And all this excess stuff matters for company drivers too, because company drivers only get paid the dispatched miles. They don't get paid if they have to drive 60 miles to a washout and 60 miles back. They don't get paid for those miles. They don't get paid for the extra 50 miles once they put the address in and realize, oh shit, that's an extra 50 miles. They don't get paid those miles, but they still have to use the time. They're still behind the wheel. They're still working those miles. They just don't get paid those miles. The truck doesn't get paid those miles, and the company driver doesn't get paid those miles. So it matters. It matters a lot. I'm getting a call there. Let me kill that off. So, when I see these comments of, why are you always concerned about miles? Man, look, I don't base my loads just off miles. There's a lot of variables, like I said. I look at all those variables really quick and include them in the algorithm of choosing a load, but at the end of the day, it really boils down to what revenue am I getting per day, and how do I increase that? Like this load, for example, doesn't deliver until, it's Monday. It doesn't deliver till Thursday, but I can pretty easily have it in Wednesday morning. It's a drop and hook that I can take early. I can pretty easily have it on Wednesday morning. So I'm planning on having it Wednesday morning. So that means that my day rate's, going way up. Even if I didn't deliver it till Thursday morning, it still hits my goals, but now it's going to go way up because I'm going to deliver it Wednesday morning and I'll get reloaded Wednesday. So I'll deliver a day early and get reloaded a day early, and that makes my daily gross revenue go up substantially. So it just, miles matter. They do matter. We do not get paid for deadhead miles. There's no extra money in the contract. The customer is not paying more just because you're deadheading. The rate would have been the same if you were 1 mile away or 300 miles away. It doesn't matter. The rate's still the same, and the miles definitely matter. And if you don't think the miles matter, that's fine. You do you. I just don't think that it's very wise to operate that way, of just only paying attention to revenue and not paying any attention to the miles, because there's good reasons to care about the miles. Very good reasons. Like I said, hours of service, wear and tear on your truck, fuel, paying excess miles fees, all that stuff, like definitely matters. So anyway, that's my opinion on the matter. For those who made it through this video, I'm getting comments on every single video about what do I think about the new independent contractor rule. I'm not sure. I absolutely hate it. I despise it. I find it to be offensive. And it's rather revolting that this kind of push is occurring at a federal level. And I would assume and imagine that the industry, as well as a lot of other industries, are gonna, there's lawsuits happening. So I don't think that the world's gonna change in a week or two, like some of the comments seem to think it is. But it could, when all these lawsuits shake out and all that stuff, it could dramatically change the way we all do business. And I think that's really, to be honest, I think it's really fucked up. And I find it offensive that there's people out there advocating for an end to the way many of us want to operate. Find that royally offensive. But I'm not an attorney, so that's why I haven't done a video about it. I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube, and it's like, what the fuck? You don't know shit, Like, you're not a lawyer, you're not an attorney. You're sitting here talking matter of fact. Here's what this means, and here's what this is going to do. Man, it's very complicated. I don't want to be one of those YouTubers who someone watches my video and they're like, that's not what that means, and that's not what that line is. I'm not an attorney. So I'm just kind of waiting to see how things shake out. So I'll do a video in time when I have a better, like a good solid understanding of what's actually going to be happening. But just to answer the question, because I see it in literally every video, I don't think it's good. I think it's really ugly. And I hope that it gets stopped. That's really about all I have to say about it. So, all right, guys, be safe, make good decisions, always drive, thrive. Talk to y'all soon.